and welcome. So today we're going to be going through this lovely Model G profile for the logical, intuitive introvert. It's a Socionics type. This type also matches very well the INTP because, well, especially in the Keirsey, because the Keirsey Architect's Rational profile was based on David Keirsey Jr. and Victor Titimer's L.I.I. David Keirsey Jr. was a computer scientist. Right then, so what you will see initially in this profile is, and you may have a reaction of, what the heck? TiNe? I'm TiNe, thank you very much. I'm very proud of my NE. Well, it depends on the mode. So I will just go over to just where I've got to analyze things here. So you have this column here is maximum energy, and this column has a lower energy level, but it's within the externalities row. And so it depends on the mode, whether it's TiNi or TiNe. This is why I sit on the fence and say TiNx. So, probably thinking, Woban, we need some more background. Especially if you're an INTP, you need more background. So, a little bit more about the model as a whole. There we go. Oh, it's not very clear though, is it? So, what I'll do is zoom in, and you're probably thinking, Ben, it's zoomed in, but it's rubbish. So I will go to the computer graphic that Scott Carrick helped me with. So energy level. Let's have a look at this. The social mission block. Right then, I should stay on there. So the management function. So you see there, right at the top, endowed with excess capacity, it consumes the lion's share of the psyche's energy. The more powerful the first function, the more distance the communicative field covers. So what basically means is the idea that the dominant function is the most noticeable in someone. So FI DOMs will show you a lot of FI, TE DOMs will show you a lot of T, and so on and so forth. Also, certain functions are, by their very nature, more noticeable than others to certain types. Especially, so for example, especially if somebody else doesn't like that particular function, they can sort of notice it. So INFPs will notice extroverted sensing as uncouth, aggressive, irresponsible behavior, but not like it. And INFJs will see extroverted sensing as dynamic behavior with purpose and style, all that kind of stuff. Now, and a sense of being a free spirit and living in the moment, and admire it. So we got this first function. So in the INTP, first function, endowed with excess capacity. So this function can almost be, it's not just the optimum amount of energy, it's the maximum amount of energy. So basically, the INTP can devote more energy to it than is optimum, can overindulge the TI. So it's the lead, so TI in the INTP is the lead function. Right, so let's have a little zoom in here about the lead function, the management function. And Victor called it the management function because it sets the agenda, in charge of setting goals and making decisions. So for the INTP, usually that's going to be, you know, theoretical integrity, logical consistency is set in the agenda. And it's paired with the manipulative function. And he also named them. Now, some of these don't necessarily translate well to English, but he tried to name them to have them pair up. So management with manipulative. So, for instance, the management function of ESFJ would affect the manipulative function of INTP, TiNx. So paired Jungian equivalent of the dominant function, TOTE model equivalent, test phase. Right, because INTPs are watching this, you're gonna want to know what the TOTE model is. Right, here we go. This is a functional nutshell. This is not really going to be a nutshell. This is going to be, probably might take an hour. I do not know. So there is the TOTE model. You INTPs can freeze it, read this, and think for yourself. All right then. So the idea in the TOTE model is you have a goal, you try to achieve the goal, you see if you've achieved it or not. If it doesn't work, you try something else, and you keep trying something different until you achieve the goal, or you decide, oh, it ain't worth it. I actually think that that's part of the model, though. The is it worth continuing this process? Right. I'll read this out. The model is known as the TOTE model, which stands for test, operate, test, exit. The comparison is the test. The operation is where you apply your resources. Test is comparing again. Exit from the loop when your evidence procedure tells you your outcome has been achieved. Right then. So, management function. Right. Now let's see. We've got and because you're INTPs, you won't mind bringing in a bit of Dario Nardi's research about the lead function. High EEG activity in regions correlated with the Jungian function in this position. Also related to function-specific macro states, i.e. whole neocortex EEG states. Now, there tends to be some regional correlation when it's a judging function, but not when it's a perceiving function. Not as much, anyway. So a little bit of that, but not too much. Have I put it in here? Have I put the Dario thing in here? There we go. There's the Dario thing. No, I'm lying. That's just a comedy spoof inside the head of the INTP. There you go, folks. You can. I'll just do that. Then you can freeze it, look through this, have a chuckle to yourself. There we go. But you know, we're not going to dwell on this. We're now going to go back to brain. And what Dario's research showed is there's 4 different kinds of TI, because you got to think about the TI and the STPs. Like here, like integrate vision and sensation, ISTP. In fact, this one here, deduction, highest activity, ESTP. Right. So again, I'm not doing one of my super long videos. If it was a super long video, I would go into more depth. If you want those, they're 2 hours long each. Right, so let me move along. So, going back to here, management function. Now, so we covered the energy aspect, right? And again, social mission block is these 2 functions working together, right? Externalities. Right. The externalities group takes precedence whenever society is involved. Therefore, we placed it above internalities, because when it comes to survival and development, socionics of greater importance than a single type. Okay, and then here's a good bit here. Indicated by down arrows, top functions suppress lower functions, but on its territory, the bottom functions are free from the control of upper functions. Analogy, ride a horse. So in the case of INTP, That is, usually TI is the rider and NE is the horse, so the TI is in control of the NE. Although some people who have seen my Hangouts would think that's not necessarily the case with you, Ben. But you see there, on its territory, the bottom functions are free from the control of the upper functions. So maybe when I'm on my territory, more of the NE comes out. Now that would be, and you see here, closest to function at close range, but we'll get back to that in future. Now, something in Dario Nardi's research is he said something about introverts overall said that they had a greater comfort with all of their introverted functions overall than their extroverted functions. So this is the idea that introverts with all of this top row would be introverted. You can see now why now I break the functions down into one video per function, because it's complicated, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about this creative function, and then we'll get to the profile of that block. So these two functions working together. Now I call this the fish that doesn't know it's wet function. So INTPs probably read about NI, think what a load of nonsense. You know, we work out what's going to happen through causality and logic. So you see here, execution of decisions made at stage 1. This function implements or creates. The function is flexible and unconventional, which is associated with creativity. It's paired with the break function. We'll go into that in future. Oh yes, here. What is done rather than what is thought and or said. Thus, high EEG activity is not necessarily predicted for this function. Right. I can give you another example. ESFPs can be an attention whore. They're using extroverted feeling. They don't value it, but they can use it. ENFPs can use extroverted feeling to serve another goal. They're usually the goal of championing the course. ESTJs can use extroverted sensing to enforce the rules. ESFJs can use extroverted sensing for emotional pressure. ENTJs can use extroverted intuition to take risks in the market, to see gaps and opportunities. ENTPs can use extroverted thinking to apply themselves and become the inventor. Same with ESTPs can use extroverted thinking. So it's a very powerful function that is used in the service of the lead function. So it's joined together, the social mission block. So if you think of ESFP as the politician, you've got extroverted sensing with extroverted feeling. So now we've talked about that. Now I can go to the actual profile of this block. Right. Directed towards society. So the social mission of the TiNx, according to Victor, is, again, these two things working together, TiNi. But again, sometimes in certain situations, the NE is more powerful. So it's like, in terms of information, TiNe, in terms of energy, TiNi. It's situational. But when you see here, the social mission of the TiNx is the analyst. And when the TiNx is being the analyst, then it's more TiNi than TiNe. It depends. Maybe if they're in a situation where they're doing transcontextual thinking or comparative analysis, maybe it's a bit more TiNe. But the idea is, so Ti is the fish, Ni is the water that the TiNx swims in and does not know it's wet, does not know it's using this function. So let's go with Ti minus. Logic of a researcher analyzing the subject from many different standpoints. Right. Can point out most important factors in a difficult issue and explain a complex phenomenon using basic everyday examples. Right. That's Maria added that. Peter William Atkins thinks in terms of structures, classifications, concepts, which he keeps updating and improving upon. So, for instance, David Keirsey kept changing the names of his terms, as did Victor. He went from Dionysian, Promethean, Apollonian, and Epimethean temperaments to artisan, guardian, rational, and idealist, and then to strategic, tactical, diplomatic, and logistical, changing the terms, all the while improving. Maybe harsh in his judgments and evaluations initially, but over time tends to add detail and soften his conclusions. Right, now I'll show you something about TI. We've got something like here, FE and TI, passionate and cold-blooded, but no, let's have a look at TI here. Structural logic, a function that shows us calm, cool-headed, and pedantic behavior. Right, let's look at TI here. We're not looking at TI plus, because it's controversial. We're looking at TI minus. Don't look at TI plus. Keep your eyes away from TI plus. TI minus. By fractal, I mean being fragmented and scalable. That's the kind of logic that can see order in chaos and allows describing the same object in multiple ways. The logic of contradictions and paradoxes, multidimensional polymorphic logic, relaxed and or alternatives. This is the logic of energy synergistic socionics, and it's the kind of structural logic characteristic of L.I.I. So you can see here that Victor Gulenko, you know, he's sort of saying that his own school of socionics is TI minus, fractal, you know, groovy, creative kind of logic. Whereas, look at this, for TI minus, that is the logic of information socionics as well as the structural logic of LSI. So basically saying that Model A is Model 80s, i.e. the decade it's stuck in, and it's a bit rigid. Right then, let's have a look at this. What have we got for L minus? Here we go. We've got here logic of fractal structure. Finding order in chaos, describing an object in multiple ways, resolving contradictions. Right. We've done that one. We've done that one. Caveat there. Anything else on TI? Here we go. Gulenko on TI. The last thing we will talk about is structural logic. I have myself suggested two versions of the name for the positive structural logic. We're not doing TI plus, we're doing TI minus. The minus L, the negative structural logic, is the logic of analysis rather than combining and building. Right, then we've got here. But if we consider the L.I.I, INTP, i.e. TiNe, with demonstrative NE type, they try to see different facets of the same function. Right, and then we go here. Right. Multifaceted logic with negative sign. Right. Oh, yes. This fragmented multi-level way of thinking is often not accepted by others. So L.I.I is often misunderstood. Right. Okay, there's nothing much there. I've got to move through this quickly. Oh yeah, this is the metaphor of looking at something from different angles and then combining it to get the truth. So you can look at someone's type from the angle of Keirsey temperament theory, from the angle of Enneagram, from the angle of socionics, from the angle of biography and nurture and their backstory. Right. What else? I won't go into the Keirsey organization versus order. Right, now we've got NI plus. I've got to pick up the pace a little bit. NI plus, there you go. Naturally good at calculating time required to finish a task and breaking it down into a sequence of steps. It doesn't necessarily mean that they execute those steps though, because the TE there's very little energy in the INTP for the TE. Far-seeing and punctual. Sometimes. Can see clear similarities between seemingly unrelated objects or phenomena that belong to fields far removed from one another. Now, would you like me to do that now? Would you like me to put something up that is seemingly... No, I've got to press on. Rather than dwelling on the past, tends to focus on the many facets of the future. Good at predicting consequences of an action, provided he understands its intrinsic logic. Cautious, self-sufficient, frequently lost in thought. Now, what we could say is, with ISTP, TiSX, they don't do these kind of NI things. They sort of look at, they have a tactical intelligence. They look at things in the, they look at all the, they look at all the logical angles at the present moment, and then improvise based on the current situation. They've not got this strategic long-range thinking. Now, what I'm going to now say is, because this is important, is I'm going to quickly flip ahead and say, because the TiNx, the INTP, the L.I.I. can see the cause and effect, that puts a brake on extroverted sensor. And so you see here, not good at single-mindedly pursuing his goals, his apparent stuff, the stuff about cannot force or control other people, because it's the risk. If you see the negative consequences, how things can escalate, how things can get out, how conflicts can escalate. So I'll go into more of that later. So TI and NI working together in the social mission block. Now we have the next block, which is the social adaptation block. The idea is that when you have a task and these two functions don't suit trying to solve the task, that the INTP will switch to this to try to use these functions here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a bit more of the theory of these two functions. So, well, the idea here is that actually the INTP is launched by SI+. That actually is what gets them going, is the stimulator. It launches the first function. So in if you're going through the TOTE model in chronological order, that's a, so we're going to zoom in here. So these two are working together. Right, role function. The function that is trained the way an athlete is trained by a coach or an actor is rehearsing his part. Hence the usual name role function. Just like an athlete needs to keep training to maintain muscle mass, so the person needs to keep training this function or he'll lose effectiveness. E.g., the L.I.I. needs to keep monitoring their own behavior to stop going into bad habits such as interrupting. In a dual relationship, the TiNe's role FI is trained by the ESFJ's control FI, paired with position 8 control in the dual. TOTE model equivalent exit phase. So maybe that would be when the INTP feels they are happy with the solution. Then they say, okay, this is good. It's a nice elaborate theory. Let's exit and move on to something else. Or they might feel, oh, I'm bored. I'll go on to something else. Yeah, so FI, overall temperament of INTP, balance stable. It's an introverted judging function. Summary of the introverted rational types is what we'd come under. And so in many situations, TI and FI don't conflict. They only conflict in situations where you think about something such as minimum wage. Right. Because the TI version, everyone knows the FI argument for minimum wage, you know, but the TI argument would be, well, if you set the TI argument would be, well, why don't you set the minimum wage at $50 an hour? And the reason is because maybe someone's not worth $50 an hour. Okay, we'll set it at $10 an hour. And it says, well, okay, what about those people who are trying to get their first job and are not worth that at the moment? That means you prevent them getting that entry-level job. So that's the TI argument. And the FI argument is, yes, people deserve a decent wage. The TI argument would be, well, you've got to get on the ladder. So again, TI versus F. But most of the time, you've not got a situation where those two things are battling. They work together. There's not many situations where those two things clash in. So for instance, you can get a lot of FI DOMs, especially FI and X, who are interested in philosophy, and they can do the TI thing. And philosophy is full of TI and FI where it's not necessarily contradicting each other. It's only in a few occasions that it goes head to head and contradicts itself. Right. Right. So I'll go to the role function and then we'll go back to the launch. Yeah, then I'll go back to the launcher. So this is a functional nutshell. I said this is why I break the videos down. Right. Social adaptation. So when the INTP is presented with a situation where they can't use TI and NI, so maybe it's a social situation, and it's like, oh, I don't know what to do. So it's like, okay, now they're in a situation where social adaptation. So maybe it's a social situation and they have to start using some FI, some ethics of relations. And so we got here. And there's also a little bit of development in here. Keeps his distance from people, may seem stern, aloof, and uncaring. Will maintain and protect the relationship network he grew accustomed to. And the reason why I'm reading this out is that some people watch these videos on a small mobile device. However, if he chooses to end a relationship, he's not likely to change his mind on his own. Yep. May strongly disapprove of the moles around him, but will usually keep his opinion to himself. Oh yes, and I've underlined this bit as super important. Number 5. And I'm going to zoom in with the scalable vector graphics. Cold and distant with strangers, over time, he begins to pick up the relationship nuances and finds the right approach to the person he's interested in. Right. So get better with that function. Oh yes, that function has minimum energy, which means just enough. Function is at a minimum for the solution of the corresponding task level energy consumption, but it is able to regularly solve repetitive simple tasks. So that will come down as, you'll probably see this in the behavior of the L.I.I, the TiNx, the INTP, the architect rational, the strategic accommodator, as rather pedantic manners, maybe overly formal in their interactions, very polite, if not slightly mechanical. Now, pessimum means less than the minimum. Has insufficient power to solve complex or repetitive tasks, is unable to work for a large load. Its purpose is to start the new circuit of mental activity. Position 4 activates 1. So this is the idea here. Right, and now I'm going to go back to the other graphic. So it's like if they need help, outside help from the ESFJ with SI+. Now let's go back to the explanation diagram. SI+. Right, the function in this position is triggered from the outside, thus it is referred to as launcher. It is the most sensitive and it is about new data input or collecting the feedback. Because it is very sensitive, the function in this position is chronologically first, i.e. it launches the new round of mental activity, paired with position 5, i.e. demonstrative. That would be the auxiliary SI and ESFJ. MBTI equivalent tertiary. Model 8 is mobilizing function, aka hidden agenda. Tote model equivalent test phase. Now then, there are two versions of SI. There is what I call American School SI, which I tend to prefer, and then there's Socionics SI. Socionics SI is all about comfort and bodily needs. So the idea here is that and I asked Victor this in the hangout, is that he thinks that the L.I.I needs to be well fed, needs to be well taken care of in order to think. And it's hard for them to take care of themselves because it's like super boring. So here we go. So We'll go through this, and then I'll tell you what the American version of the American school version of SI. Because I don't just want to say MBTI, because there's other schools in the West that have this viewpoint. Right. Has modest requirements for comfort at home. The most important of them being he must have good conditions for doing the work he loves. The usual everyday chores feel like a strain, but help him stay in shape. Good health is achieved mostly through moderation and a comfortable, unhurried schedule. Investing in his health and recreation brings added strength and more optimistic outlook. But over time, the launcher function can become strong. So, for instance, there's some ENFPs out there who have got it together with strong TE. Right, now let me give you the American School SI. Think of the INTP that is learning new stuff, new information coming in, and then that will stimulate the TI. So it's like new data, new information. Think of the INTP reading a new book, doing new research, and then that hitting, and then that launching the TI. So, for instance, think of an INTP reading some typology books, new information coming in. TI is looking at it and going, oh, this bit here about Enneagram, this could fit this bit. Or this bit in Please Understand Me Too. In this profile here about the ESTJ enforcing the rules and calling people on the carpet. That sounds a little bit like creative extroverted sensing in the Model G profile. And so you can see how the TI is stimulated by new information coming in the form of SI. Because if we say it's new information, SI is new information. And so, for instance, SI ego types, if you're using the American school definition of SI, they know the procedures, they know the rules. And INTPs like to get into that TI-SI loop of thinking and knowledge. Right. Algorithmic logic, as I would call it for SI. Or what it would, in typological terms, it would be the INTP keep on learning frameworks. Now, and also this explanation of SI shows how SI and NE work in tandem. I'll give it the American viewpoint and the Socionics viewpoint. Maria came up with a good phrase that I think she says is Russian. She said, intuition is a daughter of knowledge. So usually what will happen is, one of the reasons why ENTPs and INTPs and INFPs and ENFPs can come up with all of these connections is that they have a diffuse knowledge base. They have a wide knowledge base, so they have lots of things that they can make connections to. If you only look at one subject, you've not got many things you can make trans-contextual connections to, because you don't know the things where the connections would be. So you can have a TiNx and an NITx look at the same thing, and the TiNx can say, well, why didn't you see the connection to A, B, to B, C, D, and F? And because the NITx would say, because I don't care about B, C, D, E, and F. You know, I concentrate my time. I spend it wisely. I'm not a dilettante like you, Mr. TiNx. So, oh yes, Socionics, how it works with the SI and the NE. Okay, NE is about novelty. A lot of the SI homeostatic things are like chores, like things that the NE ego types, the static intuitive types would see as boring stuff. What do they call it? I've forgotten the name of quotidian. That's it. The quotidian things in life. Right. So now we're going on to the internalities row. And look here, the internalities, all the extroverted functions in the INTP. Now remember, the top row suppresses the bottom row. unless the TiNx is on their territory. So, here, at close psychological distance, functions included in the bottom row are called internalities, which means they're aimed at his territory. Right. When working externally, internalization is suppressed and muted by the vertical supervision one-way inhibition. The functions in the first position constrains the fifth, the second. So, at this very moment, folks, I am a little bit more expressive. I am on my territory. I am talking about typology. So, these functions, NE and FE, are coming a little bit more to the fore. I'm going into like the self-affirmation block. I'm acting a little bit like an ENFP. If I put the webcam on, you would see that I have... No, you wouldn't see anything because I don't go that far. Right. And plus, I haven't got any hair to dye green. So, so as you see here, NEFE. So this is when the INTP is on their territory and they're super excited and enthusiastic to talk about something theoretical that to somebody else who they think might also be interested in it. So, and that FE plus one is gold because it explains why and when the INTP is expressive. Close range territory. Now, looky here. Strong energy level for NE. Maximum energy. Like maximum energy. And then optimum energy for the FE. So, INTP at close range will use FE, but they'll also use it for its own sake, but use FE to express their enthusiasm for usually theories. Like now, like me in this hangout. Even though I'm on my own, I'm imagining you being there, enthralled. So, here we go. Okay, let's have a little bit, let's see if there's anything in the theory slide for these two functions. Oh, right, yes, they've got the example of, it has the example of SEI. That is SIFX. That is the logistical accommodator in Keirsey. Strongest position at close range, which is when they're in their wheelhouse. So, for instance, David Keirsey Jr. described this as being flaky. So, for instance, when you first meet an INTP, they might be a little bit shy, a little bit withdrawn, a little bit taciturn. I believe I'm using the word correctly there. And they're not going to show you their NE side, their little bit goofy side, their wacky side, their absurd side. When you get to know them more and they feel more comfortable, that side will come out more. That NE side. Equivalent of the auxiliary function in Jung and MBTI. Dario Nardi. High EEG activity like position 1, but not quite as strong. People of most comfort for positions 1 and 5. Right. According to it, man is asserting itself. So it's also very noticeable, the demonstrative function. Depends on the function. I mean, extroverted sensing in TISX. At the same time, it is a signal for attracting your jewel. Position used to trigger others' activity. Usual name of the demonstrative. So stimulates the launch position of this type's jewel. Right, okay, so ESFJ is like all SJs. That is the SI ego types. That is the dynamic sensing types. That is the logistical brain people. They have an associative, I call it SJNE, train of thought, where they bounce from concrete subject to concrete subject laterally. Whereas the NPs, the NE ego types, go laterally between concepts, between abstractions. So maybe this goes a bit far, but maybe, okay, if you think intelligent ESFJ probably will be stimulated by ideas from the TiNx, especially if they are amusing. At the same time, right, okay. Triggers the activity of the dual. Okay. Okay, for SIFX, for ISFJ, for logistical accommodator, becomes active when he knows the rules or is given a good explanation, and he will try to get others into action with his display of emotion. Right, because ISFJ, MBTI code, folks, deal with it. ISFJ has tertiary TI. Of course, Victor models tertiary TI plus as, you know, by the book. So that means that SEI does actually match up with ISFJ in American school typology, but the other sensing types, the other sensing introverts in socionics don't match up. Demonstrative, paired with the launcher. Okay, manipulative, let's look at this together as well. Function that is managed or governed from the outside. It is called manipulative because it is easily manipulated. Think of STPs with NFJs, or in other words, beta STs with beta NFs. Right, example, SIFX. MBTI ISFJ feels responsible for managing comfort and well-being of others, while being easily manipulated by exciting ideas and novelty. Maybe if they're an intelligent one, right? Young MBTI. I mean, they are sensors after all. It depends on the intelligence level, and so it depends on how close the S versus N is. Modulators, suggestive function, inferior. Darianardi, tandem use with function in the management position, confirmed on page 194 of his functions book, 8 Keys to Self-Leadership. I.e., 8 key, see it there. Book endorsed by Victor G. Right, so now we go to the, I wonder how long this video is. Now we go to this, and then we go, hang on a minute, Ben, I can't read that. That's your original dodgy graphic. But these were the bits that fit me in green. So let's go to the spiffy computer graphic. So remember, this is when the INTP is in their comfort zone. This is when the INTP, think of the INTP that's talking to someone who is like-minded, and the INTP is thinking, oh, I can talk to this person about this thing that I'm interested in, and they are also interested in that thing, and they find a connection with this person. So, okay, let's look at NE minus. Oh yeah, let's have a little definition of NE minus. Victor. Okay, NE minus. Right, here we go. And he actually mentions me in this hangout. Victor via Maria. On me suggesting different names for NE minus. Ben is a good example of intuition of alternatives because he keeps suggesting different versions and never stops. VG. So traditional socionics usually attracts the people with intuition of perspectives. That's NE plus, i.e. right spinning types, e.g. ENTP. They saw the system, they liked it, and they are not looking for anything else. They just stick to that. Yeah, Victor has an issue with the ENTPs. So the people who, the types with intuition of alternatives, NE minus, i.e. less spinning types, that includes ENFP, usually juggle several systems, try to compare them, and consider them facets of a huge Uber system. Now, if you want to see some evidence of this, watch the Hangouts with Catherine Favre. Right? She's happy with the NE, and she knows many different systems, and she says that when she tries to type someone, she has like 15 different data points and different angles. So ENFP can do a lot of this trans-contextual thinking, this NE minus. Usually, here we go. This is spot on though for the definition of NE minus. Usually juggle several systems, try to compare them, and consider them facets of a huge Uber system. And this is also explains why Victor Gulenko doesn't get seriously pissed off when I keep bringing up Keirsey in a Socionics Hangout. Right. So if we compare people with types L.I.I. and I.L.I., the humanitarian socionics, there we go, which are built by taking from different... Oh, here we go. Yeah, his school is built from taking from different systems. And he says that his school attracts TiNx types, L.I.I. types, who this approach is natural for. And the I.L.I. tend to take one system and criticize the rest, so that humanitarian socionics doesn't sit well with them. So Ritter is now criticizing INTJs as well, the Vaserlan, the I.L.I. And so both intuitions are equally important for the society. Okay, and there we go. There's my comment. Okay, folks, and you've probably seen it here in this hangout where I've talked about Keirsey, Dario Nardi, and Socionica. So multiple angles on the greater truth. Right. Is there something else on NE+? NE-. Here we go. NE- to TiNx. Intuition of alternatives. Setting yourself apart. Finding ways to avoid boredom. Turning the commonplace upside down. Noticing the hidden side of things. That's what an IEE is good at. ENFP. Intuition of prospects. Searching for the new, exploring, inventing, taking risks, trying to be original, demonstrating ability. Such is the NE of the ILE, the NeTx. Right. Then what have we done? We've done that, and now we're going to go to... Yes, I think we've done that. Yes. Right then, here's the key. There's one more block after this. Right. Self-affirmation block. So remember, when the ENTP is in their comfort zone, they can act a little bit like an ENFP. And general observation about introverts. When you first meet them, or when they're not in their comfort zone, they will take longer to reply. And because of that, in a group situation, extroverts will talk quicker, and that will sort of like prevent the INTP from coming in. As the INTP becomes more comfortable, they will reply quicker and initiate more. So you can see the shift, the supervisee shift, where they act a little bit more like an ENFP. Now, in my case, it's a little bit exaggerated because I might, and let me let you into a little secret here, folks, a sudden revelation. I might be an Enneagram Type 7 INTP. That is how strong the NE is. Right. To answer an important question, may enter a brief trance. Once he's got the problem figured out, may suggest novel solutions which stand in contrast to the traditional approach to the problem. So, Victor may be writing about himself here. Model G may suggest novel solutions which stand in contrast to the traditional Model A approach to the problem. Tolerant of the lifestyle or views different from his own, will not push his opinions. Gives others plenty of choice. Typically has a hobby and keeps honing in on it. You know, like a YouTube channel. There we go. It's now just called, it's called Ben Vaserlan. Right. FE+. Now this is the gold. Reserved. Does not like small talk and is irritated by uninvited guests. Can't make them feel at ease. Yes. I'm asking the INTPs out there, do you like uninvited guests? I'll ask the sexual subtypes. Only if they're hot. Right. And not an SP. Right. A little bit scary. Right. Can only keep a lively conversation if the topic is of personal concern to him. Yes. Right. Okay. Just a little insight. If the topic is not of personal concern to the INTP, then they would move from being on the self-affirmation comfort zone block to being in the social adaptation block of, oh my God, I've got to talk to these boring people about this quote about this boring concrete subject. Give me a concept, please. So they're in this social adaptation block. And again, over time, they learn to talk to concrete speech people. And so you can see here, you've got social mission. And it's like, when they're in their comfort zone, they can talk theory with, you know, and the things they're interested in. Self-affirmation block. When they can't talk about what they want to talk about and they have to adapt. Social adaptation block, the FI. Right. Right, let's go here. I just thought of that just now. Right, this is what is brilliant about Model G, is you will come up, it is a template where you can come up with your own insights. That is how good it is. So, can't make them feel at ease. Can only keep a lively discussion if the topic is of personal concern to him. Let's put that in massive, massive scalable vector graphics. There we go. Can only keep a lively conversation if the topic is of personal concern to him. Right, or if he's read books on how to fake it. If necessary, can find an interesting aspect to the situation, find a way to arouse another person's interest in the topic. Right. That is FE working with NE. Find an interesting aspect to the situation, find a way to arouse another person's interest in the topic. So for instance, INTP, when they're in their comfort zone, can work out, oh, they're interested in this thing, and make a connection and go, oh, they might be interested in this other thing. So when they're in their wheelhouse, the INTP can go, oh, interesting. And they can hear something and make a connection to something else and tell them about something that they might be interested in because they see the connections. And again, this is when the INTP is acting like a miniature ENFP. And that is also, look at this, NEFE is the social mission block of the ENFP. Right. So, and it's called a supervisee shift, sorry. Number 4, can present any subject in an exciting, fetching way. And Maria added here in italics, and frequently in a very animated manner. That's not just referring to me. You should see the gesticulations I'm making behind this share screen. Right. Although, in fact, I'm wearing myself out. I'll have to lie down afterwards. Although unfriendly and abrupt with outsiders, for his loved ones, he can create relaxed and festive atmosphere. Right then. So what we're going on to now? Now we're going on to one of the best aspects of Model G, the inflation block. It's better than that stupid id, ego, super ego bullshit in sorry for swearing, in Model A. Like, as if you're unconscious of half of the functions. I mean, here's a massive difference. TE is meant to be an unconscious id function in the INTP. Well, no, because people think about that function a lot. Right, so for instance, they just ignore it. Right, inflation block. And Dario and I very much loved it, and Victor lived through very high inflation in the former Soviet Union in the 1990s. Overvoltage on this block leads to collapse of the mind, just as monetary inflation leads to collapse of the economy. Now what this means is, if you give the INTP too much pressure, too much stimulation, like ESTPs will love the pressure and the stimulation because they can show their mettle. Too much pressure, too much competition, too much TE stuff, right? It's too much for the INTP. It's too much. They've not got the energy for it. And again, energy level, minimum in pink, maximum in purple. Right. Now remember what it said here. The function. Now, I asked Maria in the actual hangout, what does this mean? And she said she didn't quite know, but I'll have a bash at explaining it. The function that is created, the one a person should create almost from scratch in order to survive. The usual name of the function is break, as its activation tends to slow people down and drain them. Right, I'll go through this and I'll try and explain. SIFX creates new relationships by bringing people together, hence the name mediator, and expects the business logic part to be custom made for his activities so he won't overexert himself. Right, I'll just do this last bit, then I'll explain. Dario Nardi, least preferred function along with function in role position because of preference for functions in management and demonstrative positions which have maximum energy. This is the equivalent of the trickster function in the Beebe model. Right, now I'm going to explain things. Break function. INTP can see the future. They can have a long-range plan. Right? And then it's like, oh, shit. I've not got the willpower to enforce, to materialize that plan. So, like I said, it's that way it said there, it expects it to be custom made. It expects it to be implemented. It's not there. You've got the TI, got the NI vision. But, you know, NI is the vision, SE is the execution to get to the vision. Right, so now we go over to another aspect, so willpower for extroverted sensor. Right, did I? Yes, okay. Not good at, I'll zoom in a bit. Right, I'll put it in there because this is what we're concentrating on. Paired with creative. Not good at single-mindedly pursuing his goals. Right, his apparent stubbornness does not help much. Right, see that there? Not good. This is new stuff I'm noticing. Not good at single-mindedly pursuing his goals. Goals. Also comes through the social mission block. Also with the NI+. Naturally good at calculating the time required to finish a task, breaking it down into sequence of steps. Right? But predicting consequences of an action. But not good at single-mindedly pursuing his goals. So here you see internal judger, but when it comes to implementation, the INTP cannot implement that. Cannot implement it. There. Execute the plan. Now, what did Keirsey write in the architect rational profile? Have I got that in here? Have I got that in here? Yes, I have. Let's see what Keirsey wrote for the INTP. Dun dun dun! Dun dun dun! If an organization is to use their talents effectively, architects must be given an efficient support staff who can capture their ideas as they emerge before they lose interest and turn to another idea. Not good at the implementation. Right. We're now going on to another. And now we're going to go back to the graphic. Can't force or control other people. Well, they can, but it's so ham-fisted and overdone that it is likely to be blowback because it's all or nothing. It's too much. In an emergency situation, often stays passive and hesitant unless someone close to him is involved. It is easier for him to let go than to stick up for himself. Repelled by atmosphere of crude competition built on bullying, trickery, and manipulation. Tends to ignore the rules or demands he disagrees with, rather than arguing over them. Right. So still a little bit stubborn there in going against the rules, but does but sort of like a passive aggressive kind of conflict there. Right, I'll be finishing up soon. I'll probably take about 5 minutes longer. Right, so let's now go to the final block, the control block. Right. The coach, whose function is to drill others rather than perform by himself. It is commonly referred to as control function as it keeps monitoring the surroundings. E.g., SIFX trains his ability to predict events as well as sense of time. He looks out for all the ways he can be violated and has to protect his territory. What Keirsey called the ISFJ? The protector. Least energy but biggest information. Right, so FI DOMs have a load of energy about FE things, but they just don't agree with them, or they think the FI is more important. It depends if there's a clash. The actions for which the person is closely monitoring, it is very sensitive. About it, the type thinks a lot, such as INTP will keep thinking about their lack of productivity. Right. And it will gnaw away at them. Right. Now, we go to TE+. Oh, yes, this is the positive business logic. I'll show this on this graphic. TE+. Investing to make a profit, valuing profit over usefulness, exchanging and raising prices, constantly updating the product, responding to demand quickly, such as the business logic of ENTJ. Also, what we got here? TE+. Business logic, you know, such as like, what's on my wall, folks? Peter Schiff. Check him out. Business logic. Well, having a clear vision of the problem finds it hard to take action. Right. Remember that what we said there about the SE break? Not good at single-mindedly pursuing his goals. Especially when you start having loads of ideas with the NE minus and are too busy analyzing things and doing transcontextual thinking to actually implement stuff. And what did Keirsey say? It requires an efficient support staff. For an organization to get the most out of the architect rational, requires an efficient support staff to implement their goals, capture their ideas before they move on to the next one. Right. Worried that his analysis will have few practical applications, but they still keep doing it though, because they've got no energy for the TE. Well versed in business matters. Peter Schiff on the wall can suggest a variety of entrepreneurial initiatives, knows how to build an effective organization, but typically does not possess the energy and organizational skills necessary to put their knowledge to work. Now then, here's something I came up with. So, given this, you have to think about when an INTP takes the MBTI step 1 and you get the JP questions. And DA Jones wrote an interesting article about how the INTP is in, because, you know, dominant function is a judging function, internally a judger, externally a perceiver. So, making plans, making to-do lists, logical consistency, internally a judger. But externally, in terms of their behavior, look, lack of organization, energy, not good at single-mindedly pursuing their goals. Low energy for these, but thinks about it a lot. So you have to think carefully about the JP questions. So when I took MBTI step 1, I scored as 90J with a slight preference for J, but I said all the while in these questions, yes, I would do the plan. I would have an enormous to-do list. Right, so it's like, oh, what? Oh, you're such a judger, man. But it's like there's making a list and then there's executing the list. It's two different things. It depends whether it's TI or TE. So there we go. So this is towards the end, and that has been the INTP L.I.I. in a functional nutshell. a big nutshell, a walnut, if not a coconut. There we go. And I'm going to try and stop this now by going over to stop